Luckily, I have worked in this space over the last 10 plus years
Great.
on both mining, oil and gas, and then the downstream sector. And I can say on authority that this contract is not needed. The expanded contract, or even the one that was done before, is not needed and should be terminated or abrogated. So in that regard, given what Manasseh has just said, and others have also said, it is very clear, and I'll come to the details in a moment, that the SML contract is not needed. Number two, it does not really add any value. And even some of the purported claims, when you actually look at the data and you do the analysis, it cannot be substantiated for one reason or the other. The first point I would like to make in terms of the detail is what Manasseh talked about. These state agencies actually conduct a lot of periodic audits, and I've actually been involved in some of them in the past under different, donor-funded programs, and they are supported by relevant legislation or regulation. So let's look at, for example, the upstream oil and gas sector, right? Beside the law that sets up the Petroleum Commission and gives them the mandate to do what they do, there's a raft of other legislation that gives them scope and room to audit and then also to check the production volumes that are coming from the sector. The most important one is actually a piece of LI called LI 2246. It's the Petroleum Exploration and Production Measurement Regulations. And that LI has enough detail that shows the revenue assurance processes and the mechanisms that one follows in trying to basically ensure that the state is getting its fair share of the oil volumes that are lifted. We also, on the oil platforms themselves, they actually have electronic meters, right? So in the early days of the oil industry, there was an issue where some exports of crude oil took place without the meters not working fully. Subsequent to that, so this is basically after 2013, 14, thereabout, we've actually had these electronic meters that have been installed on the platforms, and then also GRA itself carry out physical inspection. So whenever a tanker is leaving the offshore platform or these export vessels, they actually do measurement and dipping, and there's a whole series of mechanisms that are involved to basically ensure that you're getting the right volumes that are due to the state. Number two, if you look at even the PIAC reports and other reports in terms of what we are getting from our entitlement share of the revenues, often there's very little difference between what we're getting and even what the companies are getting themselves. So if you now say you're going to do an audit, and even this audit, we're not even sure what exactly SML was going to do to add to that. There are companies, if you even wanted to do, for example, a cost audit, there are companies that are out there that have, one, the capability and the capacity to do a thorough piece of work on cost auditing, and I'm not talking revenue audit, cost auditing, than what SML purports to have done. So if you look at the evidence and what the agencies do already, there is nothing whatsoever that SML would have done that adds any value to what currently exists, because the agencies, by law, do these audits themselves anyway in that regard. Again, if you look at the downstream sector and you look at the MPA data, you look at the ASEP statement, you do the analysis over 10 years, over 20 years, it is very clear that this consumption increases, it up and down, it changes year on year, right? So the point that at one point, they talk about a 33% or so increment in volume or consumption because of SML, that is not borne by the fact. In fact, you look at that and you look at the analysis, you can see in some years the growth rate goes up, some years it comes down in a way that is follows the dictates, of the market. So you look at the ASF statement and it says that, quote, the analysis indicates that SML's data was intentionally inflated to validate its contract with GRA, and it bore no correlation with the data employed for revenue accounting. And I strongly stand with that, because I've looked at the data myself, and again, it's very clear that there is no value whatsoever that SML is bringing, that already the existing institutions in the country are not doing themselves.